So this is another one of Santha's amazing pictures of the Great Pyramid from the air. The ancient Egyptians spoke of a time called Zep Tepi, the first time when the gods walked the earth. If we're going to find out when that was, you need to have knowledge of an obscure astronomical phenomenon called the precession of the equinoxes. Now, we all know that everybody's heard the song, "We live in the dawning of the age of Aquarius." Actually, this connects to this idea. Because the Earth wobbles on its axis and it's the viewing platform from which we observe the stars, it changes the times that particular stars rise in times of year, and it changes the positions of those stars in the sky as viewed from the Earth. Right now, at dawn on the spring equinox, the sun rises against the background of the constellation of Pisces. We live, if you like, in the age of Pisces, and we will do for the next 100 years or so. But because of the precessional wobble, we're going to move into the age of Aquarius in about 100 years. That just means that the constellation of Aquarius will house the sun on the spring equinox in that time because of the precessional wobble. And these shifts take place at the rate of about 1 degree every 72 years. Now, the discoverer of precession the discovery is attributed to a Greek astronomer and mathematician called Hipparchus. And we're looking at 127 BC. But these guys, Giorgio de Santillana and Hertha von Deschend, in an amazing piece of work called Hamlet's Mill, strongly dispute that. And they suggest that we're looking at an extremely ancient knowledge of precession, worldwide heritage of a lost civilization to which all subsequent civilizations in all parts of the globe, forgetful of the source of the precious legacy they received, are the ungrateful heirs. Giorgio de Santillana was professor of the history of science at MIT. Hertha von Deschend was professor of the history of science at Frankfurt University, so they're no lightweights. They refer to the fact that a series of numbers keep cropping up in ancient myths all around the world, associated with imagery. And those numbers are all based on the number 72. I have to be quick about this, but 72 divided by 2 is 36. 72 plus 36 is 108. 108 divided by 2 is 54. There's a whole series of numbers in ancient mythology, far more ancient than the Greeks, which deploy these numbers. They go back right into the Rig Veda in written forms and much, much earlier than that. If we go to Angkor in Cambodia, an amazing site. Again, Santha took this from a helicopter way back in the 90s. You'll find at Angkor a myth displayed on the walls, and that's called the churning of the Milky Ocean. And here we see the great serpent wrapped around the body of Mount Mandara, and teams of demons and angels are pulling on the body of the serpent. This is seen as an image of precession, of the precessional wobble by Santillana and von Deschend. And they point out that it's not only expressed in myth, but also in architecture. So at Angkor Thom, we've got 108 statues on the bridge. That's a precessional number. It's 72 plus 36, 54 on each side. And it's the churning of the Milky Ocean by Mount Mandara that's being displayed there. Angkor Wat is, like the Great Pyramid, is aligned to within a fraction of a single degree of true north, south, east, and west. And on the spring equinox, if you go to Angkor and stand at the end of that long causeway right in the center, you'll observe this, and you'll only observe it then. You'll observe the sun rising directly over the central tower and sitting on top of the central tower of Angkor Wat. This site, nobody disputes it, is an equinoctial marker. It's designed to celebrate the spring equinox. And that's what you see at that time and at that time only. Let's jump over to Egypt now. When we come to the Nile Delta, here's the Great Pyramid. Now, I'll give you some statistics. It's 481.39 feet high originally. It's a bit lower today. It lost some 30 feet from its top in an earthquake. Footprint of the base, 13.1 acres. Weight, 6 million tons. 2.3 million blocks. Lost casing stones also came off in that earthquake. 115,000 of them weighing 10 tons each, covering an area of 22 acres. Angle of slope is 52 degrees. And this monument is aligned to within 3/60ths of a single degree of true north. Why do I pick 3/60ths? Because degrees are divided into 60 minutes. So we're talking about 3 arc minutes, a tiny fraction of a single degree of error in the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid seems to be speaking to the earth. It's not only aligned almost precisely to true north, it's placed very close to latitude 30, 1/3 of the way between the equator and the North Pole. And most mysteriously of all, if you take the height of the Great Pyramid and multiply it by 43,200, which is a precessional number, it's one of those numbers, you get the polar radius of the Earth. And if you measure the base perimeter of the Great Pyramid and multiply it by the same number, you get the equatorial circumference of the Earth. So we have a monument that is perfectly aligned to geographical north, and that encodes the dimensions of the Earth on a scale based on a key motion of the Earth itself, the precession of the Earth's axis. This, to me, is very clever. Now, I'm not going to support that here. There's not much time. But if anybody wants to freeze the frame and look at this slide, all this information comes from IES Edwards about the statistics of the Great Pyramid, and the calculations are there. Now, there's the Giza Plateau. There's our 3 Great Pyramids. It's hard to... Can you see the Sphinx in this, Flint?
No, maybe I'm missing.
How about you, Joe?
Is that in the left-hand corner?
Yeah, it's in the left
okay, I
there.
see it, yeah.
It's in the left there. It's 270 feet long, but you can see how it's kind of dwarfed by the pyramids in the background. The Great Sphinx looks over the Nile Valley. That's the Nile Valley we're looking at. And the Great Sphinx is oriented perfectly due east. We've talked about the erosion of the Sphinx. This is the view from the back of the Sphinx's head. If you were there at the summer solstice, you would see the sun rising very far to the left, far to the north of east. If you were there at the winter solstice, you'd see the sun rising very far to the south, south of east. But if you're there on the spring equinox, you see the Sphinx is looking directly at the rising sun, just like Angkor does. It's an equinoctial marker. It's clearly there to celebrate the equinoctial moment. And we find the same kind of metaphor of a whirling, churning process taking place in ancient Egypt, for example, here. The question then becomes, was there a time when the lion Sphinx looked at a lion in the sky? And yes, there was a time when the lion Sphinx looked at a lion in the sky. And that time is around 12,600 years ago. It's not a single moment. It's an epoch of several hundred years. But the constellation of Leo was the age of Leo, was rising, housing the sun 12,600 years ago. Precession can be used to fix the date of monuments, still is today. The Hoover Dam has a star map built into it, which freezes the skies above the Hoover Dam. And the reason that is there, the architect said, in remote ages to come, intelligent people with knowledge of precession would be able to discern the astronomical time of the dam's construction. So let's use this precessional tool to consider the age of the whole Giza Plateau. I strongly reaffirm, I do not insist that the pyramids are 12,000 years old. I do insist that the Sphinx is 12,000 years old. I think it's a very strong argument that Robert Schoch has made. But I do think the ground platforms for the Sphinx were there. I think that for the pyramids were there 12,000 years ago, and I think the project was completed much later by the ancient Egyptians. You need to know a bit about Egyptian mythology. The god Osiris, who walked the earth in the legendary Zep Tepi the first time, murdered by 72 conspirators, another one of those precessional numbers, eventually becomes the ruler of the ancient Egyptian afterlife kingdom, which is called the Duat, which is both an underworld and a region of the sky. And here's Robert Bauval's Orion correlation. And one of Robert's strongest critics is Ed Krupp from the Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles, who doesn't accept the correlation. Nevertheless, he does accept that according to the pyramid text, the pharaoh rose to the stars as Orion. Egyptian astronomy recognized Orion, at least his belt, as the celestial incarnation of Osiris. And I want to pay tribute to Robert Bauval. He's another researcher in this alternative field who has suffered massive heart-rending attacks by the academic establishment, and yet who has contributed a key idea that is worthy of further consideration. One of the reasons I don't separate the Great Pyramids from the ancient Egyptians is that there are 4 shafts cut through the body of the Great Pyramid, and this is not disputed. The southern shaft of the King's Chamber points directly at the belt of Orion, and specifically at the lowest of the 3 stars, as it crosses the meridian, which is the north-south line in the sky, in the epoch that the pyramids are supposedly built, around 2,500 BC. And so do all the other 4 shafts also target stars in that epoch, the epoch of 2,500 BC. But when we come back to the Sphinx, we have to remember this alignment is slow. It would have remained recognizable for more than 1,000 years, roughly the Younger Dryas, roughly from 12,800 to 11,600 years ago. what confronts us at Giza, in my view, is a three-dimensional representation of the sky of about 12,800 to 11,600 years ago. We have the Sphinx looking due east at the constellation of Leo. At the moment the sun bisects the horizon, we find that the constellation of Orion is sitting due south on the meridian with its three belt stars in the same pattern as the three great pyramids on the ground. And not only that, but precession has caused the orientation of the belt stars to change. In 2500 BC, they were in the wrong orientation. 10,500 BC, they're in the right orientation. And I'm just asking, are we looking at the date stamp of Zep Tepi, the first time, written in the astronomical language of precession? And lastly, in case anybody doubts that we've made up these images, these are shots from Stellarium. This is 10,600 BC. This is the due east view from Giza, looking at the constellation of Leo, rising in direct line with the gaze of the Sphinx. As the sun breaks the horizon, Leo is a bit higher. If we look due south at that moment, we'll see the constellation of Orion sitting due south on the meridian. And finally, we have Orion and the Sphinx in this single image. These are genuine images from Stellarium. Anybody can have a computer software program and go look at the ancient skies. And the ancient skies tell us that there's this astonishing connection between the Sphinx in its equinoctial alignment and the constellation of Leo, and between the Great Pyramids and the constellation of Orion as it looked 12,500 years ago.
Flint, what is your take on this, the understanding of the precessional equinoxes? Do you buy it?
Unsurprisingly, no. So let me explain.
Okay.
So